hurts, habits, and hang-ups too much, we feel lots of shame, we feel lots of guilt, we feel lots of helplessness. Because if you understand the addictive cycle, you start out, you have choice, you really liked it, whatever it is you're doing, and you think it's really helping you, it's helping you to avoid the pain in your life, but eventually it takes over. And then we don't have the freedom to take or not take it, or to do it or not do it, or to get in that another broken relationship or dysfunctional relationship. So at this point then, we lose our choice in the matter. And then we have to have intervention for us to get better. So that's kind of how it goes. And so we just want to keep thinking again that it's about recovering. We've talked about this over and over about trauma and abandonment. So many of us, this is the beginning of our pain. So many of us, the beginning of our addictive behaviors and thinking was caused by trauma and abandonment. And so what that really means is that what we want to do is we want to avoid pain. We want to not face our pain. And what we're telling you at NorthStar is, not only do you need to face your pain, you need to embrace your pain. And again, I know it's hard to hear sometimes, but we eventually need to see it as a gift. Again, we don't want trauma and abandonment for anyone, but we can't turn the clock back, so all you can do is move forward. All you can do is move forward and take all the stuff that's happened in our lives, either what we've done or what's been done to us, take that and somehow learn from it and become a better person. So the problem is when we look at relapse brings on lots and lots of shame, lots and lots of frustration, lots and lots of sadness, lots of all that stuff. Your families thought you were going to make it and you relapsed, so they've given up again. You can go down the list. But here's what I'm going to tell you. I want you hear me say this about 12 times a day. Relapse is part of recovery. I have yet to meet anyone who's in recovery who has not relapsed. So once you understand that, again, I'm not promoting it. We're not promoting relapse here. I'm just telling you, we're all going to relapse. It's some day, some way we're going to relapse, and we have to pick ourselves back up and move forward. So at this point, I'm going to read Paul. Now, I do apologize. This is quite a bit here, but it is so well written. This is from the Message Bible again, and I don't know if Eugene Peterson understands recovery, but I think the way he wrote the Message Bible, it certainly feels that way at times. So I'm going to start here. This is Paul, and he's talking about himself here. So again, for you that don't know who Paul is, Paul wrote over half of the New Testament. He's the icon of Christianity in so many ways. So much of what he wrote about is just wonderful and beautiful, and he's tough at times on us as Christians. And here he's talking about himself. So let me read this. So he goes, I was fooled and fell for it. The very command that was supposed to guide me into life was cleverly used to trip me up, throwing me headlong, so sin was plenty alive and I was stone dead. But the law code itself is God's good and common sense. Each command saying in holy counsel. I can already hear your next question. Does that mean I can't even trust what is good? Is good just as dangerous as evil? No, again. Sin simply did what sin's so famous for doing, using the good as a cover to tempt me to do what would finally destroy me. By hiding within God's good commandment, sin did far more mischief than it could ever have accomplished on its own. And I think for us that are in our hurts, habits, and hang-ups living, when we're in that, we see lots of things we're doing as a good thing, even though it probably isn't. I can anticipate the response is coming. I know that all God's commands are spiritual, but I'm not. Isn't this also your experience? Yes, I'm full of myself. After all, I've spent a long time in sin's prison. What I don't understand about myself is that I decide one way, but then I act another, doing things I absolutely despise. And again, all of us in recovery, we know that one. So if I can't be trusted to figure out what is best for myself and then do it, it becomes obvious that God's command is necessary. But I need something more. For if I know the law, but still can't keep it, and if the power of sin within me keeps sabotaging my best intentions, I obviously need help. I realize that I don't have what it takes, which then that's when we can get into recovery. I can will it, but I can't do it. I decide to do good, but I don't really do it. I decide not to do bad, but then I do it anyway. My decisions, such as they are, don't result in actions. Something has gone wrong deep within me and gets the better of me every time. It happens so regularly that it's predictable. The moment I decide to do good, sin is there to trip me up. I truly delight in God's commands, but it's pretty obvious that not all of me joins in that delight. Parts of me covertly rebel, and just when I least expect it, they take charge. Again, trauma and abandonment, that's when it raises its ugly head with us. When we have triggers, when we have those moments where we just can't do it anymore, we can't face that pain. I've tried everything, and nothing helps. I'm at the end of my rope. Is there no one who can do anything for me? Isn't that the real question? The answer, thank God, is that Jesus can and does. He acted to set things right in this life of contradictions where I want to serve God with all my heart and mind, but am pulled by the influence of sin to do something totally different. And, I really like this last paragraph there. We had a debate about this on Friday night, and what I like about this is that Paul didn't say, well, I found Jesus and it's all good now. I'm living perfectly, no problems. That is not what he says here. He says that Jesus does, and thank God for Jesus Christ, that he does come and he does love us, he gives us grace. But you know what? At the end he says, but I'm still pulled by the influence of sin. So I think sometimes part of our addiction recovery is we get perfectionistic, and so we think, well, if I'm recovering now so I can do everything perfect. Oh no, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling depressed. Well, I guess there I go. I'm bad. I might as well relapse. That's not how it works. And that's what Paul's saying here. You're not perfect. We're not perfect. Here's a guy who we look to and so much, and look at all the stuff he was struggling with. I just love his writing here. And to me, it gives me hope. It takes away shame for me. I hope it does that for you. So let's talk about relapse a little bit more now. So we never want it, but relapse is part of recovery. Have I said that enough yet? Relapse is part of recovery. We're going to relapse. The problem is that the good thing about when we relapse, if we've been in recovery, we don't have to start over. We don't have to go all the way back to zero and, we got to start everything over. Because you know what? I know some things to do now when I do relapse. I know that I need to call somebody after I've relapsed. I know that I need to get myself in somewhere if I've relapsed. I need to talk to someone. I can go to a meeting. I can do all these things because now I know. So I'm not starting over at ground zero. And the other thing is that the reason why we relapse is because we're imperfect human beings who are struggling with pain. I don't know about you, but it's not the most fun thing to do is to think, I got to deal with pain again today. I get to face some more misery in my life. I get to go back and think about some awful things that happened to me. Or I got to go back and look at some awful things I did. But the point is we can do it. We can do it and put this stuff in proper perspective. And the reason why we relapse too is because we care. We get hurt by people. We care. It hurts us, so we relapse. Or we are living in hurt, and our brains are in that survival mode. We relapse because of that. The point is, we relapse. It makes sense. It's logical. I always like the story that Dr. Tversky in his great book, Addictive Thinking, talks about. And if you've never seen that book, it's a great book. So he talks about, his analogy is so good. So one morning he wakes up, he's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's very cold. Ice, snow all over the place. Goes out to start his car, doesn't start. He's got to get this letter to the post office. The post office is 4 blocks away. So he starts walking down the sidewalk. It's clean, it's clear. He's walking. Whoops, he hits ice. Somewhere along the line, someone hadn't cleared the sidewalk very good. He wipes out. And you know how you do that when you fall? The first thing you do is you always look around, see who saw you. Then you go, oh, that hurt. So he wasn't injured, but it hurt. I mean, it shook him up. He was in a lot of pain. And he said, I probably said a few expletives to the person who didn't clean their sidewalk very good. But he says, so I got up, and I had to make a decision. Did I go back home, or did I go on to the post office? So what I do? I said, I got to go to the post office. So I hobbled in pain, but I got the letter to the post office. That's such a great analogy for relapse. He didn't go back. He didn't go back to his house and not mail the letter. He got back up in a lot of pain, probably did some destruction, probably did some things that probably hurt his life a little bit, but he got back up and he went forward. He didn't go backwards. Same thing with us. When we relapse, what do? We go back to our meetings. And at least at NorthStar, and I know AA, nobody judges you. Nobody goes, well, you relapsed, don't come here anymore. We all go, yep, got it, done that one, come back. But it's not so easy, though, when you're judging yourself with toxic shame, when you're seeing yourself as perfectionism. it's easy to become very judgmental and very depressed. So I'm just telling any of you out there that's listening to me, if you're relapsing right now, you can come back. You don't have to start over. You know what to do, and you need to go ahead and do it. And the other thing about relapse is that addictive thinking always precedes addictive behavior, if that makes sense. So here's some for us to think about from warning signs about relapse. Here's some things we do before we relapse. One is we start living with agitation and anger at the world. Things just torque you, right? Those little things that you've kind of got past that used to make you so mad, because when we're addictive thinkers, we can become very agitated, become very angry. Everybody makes us mad. Everybody else is the problem. Or, well, we're the whole problem, but everybody else is the problem. You get the point. We don't connect. We disconnect, and we just see everything as a problem. Everything gets bigger than it is, and we become very angry. We become impatient, right? We get impatient with people. If you have any road rage in you, right? I always tell people it's a sign. If you want to see how you're doing, next time you're out there driving, someone cuts you off and you don't go crazy, you're getting better, right? If you hunt them down, chase them down, and try to hit them from rear, you're probably going to relapse, right? Very simple, right? Our self-loathing starts kicking in. These are signs for us that we're going to start relapsing again. Triggers kick in. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about triggers, but triggers are a physiological reaction to something in our lives that's happened in the past. And it triggers us so it feels like it's happening again. And it feels real in the moment. If you start having a lot of triggers, you're getting ready to relapse. These are all warning signs. And then we start behaving in ways that sabotage ourselves. We set ourselves up to fail. You know, if I say that let's say I'm a food addict, and then I go out and I buy 14 gallons of ice cream, that's probably a hint that relapse is on its way, right? Or if I start driving by the ABC store on a regular basis and looking and wondering and slowing down, yeah, I'm getting ready to relapse. The other thing, of course, is that we start listening to our survival brain. The abandonment, trauma stuff really kicks in on us. We start focusing on it. We start reliving it. We start blaming ourselves for a lot of it. There's another sign of relapse coming. And, of course, then we really know we're in trouble when we start saying things like, I'm doing really good. I don't need to go to meetings anymore. I'm doing great. I'll just sit here and listen to the radio station and make me feel better. And I don't need to focus and do meditation and prayer. I've got it. I'm moving past this, and I'm feeling kind of bad for those other people that aren't doing as good as I am right now. That's when we know relapse is right around the corner. Then, of course, you haven't done any of that. If you start lying to yourself a lot and start justifying the things you're doing, and you start telling yourself that, I've been on Facebook for 4 hours, but I'm looking at good stuff. I'm not, it's 4 hours, and I'm making sure that I know how many likes I'm getting, and I'm getting all razzed up here about some stuff. But you know what? Most stuff I'm looking at is about Christians, so it's okay. But I've just spent 4 hours on it, right? Haven't been there for my family, haven't been there for others, and it's all focused on me. And then if that isn't another one, of course, maybe the last warning sign is morbid thinking, that I just assume everything bad is going to happen in the future. We are going to collapse. COVID-19 is going to kill everybody. We're going to go back to the Stone Ages. Nobody's going to have a job. Everybody's going to be this. The country's going to go underneath. We're going to be ruled by the Russians before long, blah, blah, blah. That's morbid thinking. Well, I hate to tell you, but not one of us knows what's going to happen tomorrow, right? Does anybody out here knows what's going to happen tomorrow? I can make some predictions, but I don't know. But morbid thinking tells us not only can we predict the future, it's going to be bad. Yeah, you think 2020 is bad, wait till 2021 comes, right? That's morbid thinking. But the point of that is we become helpless at that point, and we hand over our power to something that's not real. So you get the warning signs. You start feeling these things, relapse is coming. But let's make sure we understand again that the reason why we relapse is because we're good and decent people. Underneath all this, we're good and decent people. Hurt, habits, and hang-ups are caused because of previous problems in our lives, of things that have happened to us, the things we put our faith in. Because, pre-step one, so we're talking about the 12 steps here, step one basically says, I'm in big trouble because, you know what, I've got stuff I'm using, I'm doing, or I'm acting in ways that are more powerful than I am now. I have lost control of it, and guess what? I figured out it's all bad for me. That's a hard step. Step one is the hardest of all. That's the one I would care about the most. Once we can start saying, you know what? I got big issues here, and I can't do it myself. Then step 2 is God can take those for you, and step 3 is to let him. So that's hard to do when you're relapsing, right? Because all you're doing is saying about how bad you are and awful things you're doing and all the things you're creating, blah, blah, blah. But we become addicted because we're good people. I believe that. If we weren't good people, we wouldn't relapse. And, the book of Romans, if you ever get a chance to look at Romans, I love this quote about Romans, which I just read out of, is that the book of Romans talks about hate at its worst and love at its best. Talk about how us as people, the dumb things we do, the mean and hateful things we do, same time, though, we look at the love and the grace of Jesus Christ. So I hope that we can hear this again. I think I've said this now 4 times. Relapse is not about failure and shame. It's a process. It's about recovery. Relapse is part of the process to recovery. We will always be in the process to recovery. I wish that we had a graduation day for recovery, but there's no such thing. Because if we just keep moving forward, our life gets better. Guess what? Our life gets better. Guess what? Our life gets better. Guess what? Our life gets better. There's some of us in NorthStar who are living lives we never dreamt would have happened. It's a beautiful thing, but it's a process. All of us have struggled. All of us have gotten better. All of us have struggled. All of us have gotten better. All of us have struggled. All of us have gotten better. You get what I'm saying? But once we understand process instead of outcome with recovery, we're on our way. And relapse is part of that process. So another contributor to relapse, I just want to talk about this very quickly, is called anhedonia. Anhedonia is a term that means that I'm not depressed and I'm not happy. I'm not sad. I'm not glad. I am numb. And numb's probably not quite the right word, but as close as I can get to it. Anhedonia causes more relapses than people realize. And guess what? If I've been using or I've been relying on compulsive behaviors or relying on people to make me happy, my brain hasn't had to do some things. So think of it as your brain as a athletic person who hasn't worked out in a long time. And then we say, all right, you need to do 100 push-ups, 100 burpees, and go run 10 miles. Yeah, that wouldn't go well. And if you did do it, you wouldn't go well the next day for sure. But that's kind of what happens with our brain. When we depend on substances or compulsive behaviors or people to do the work for us so that we can avoid pain, so we don't have to feel things, we don't have to look at ourselves, anhedonia kicks in. And I've had people relapse and they've said, you know what, I just had to do something because the world was so dull, gray, and drab. It was I just couldn't take it anymore. And I knew just one drink or just one look, just one time gambling or just back out there with someone would bring it all back. And it did for a moment, but then we relapsed. Anhedonia is deadly for relapse. But if you understand it, you're not depressed, but your brain is recovering physically, then it helps. Now, here's the problem with anhedonia. Some people it takes 2 months. I know people it takes over a year for anhedonia to go away. I don't know about you, but how would you like to hear that for a sentence? Oh, great, you're going to recovery, you're going to face your pain, you're going to embrace your pain, and you're not going to feel anything good or bad for a year. Oh, happy day. Right? That's what happens. So relapse, again, I'm just trying to get you to see objectively, spiritually, and emotionally that relapse is not a failure. It's part of the process. Again, don't want any of you to relapse. I hope all of you won't relapse today. But if you do, don't give up. Go ahead and mail that letter. Get back up off the sidewalk and hobble your way to the post office and go back to your meetings and go back to those things. Because, and here's something you got to be aware of, for when you return after relapse, it's hard sometimes. You feel shame, you feel stupid, you feel embarrassed. All those things. But it's you feeling those. It's none of us. Because the people that in NorthStar, we all get it because we've all done it. We've all relapsed. We know exactly what it means. But sometimes, when you first get into recovery, if you're not having too much anhedonia, you're getting embraced by people. People are giving you attention. People are happy for you. We're all patting you on the back saying, great job. You haven't used for a week. Way to go. Well, that feels pretty good if we're able to let people get that close to us. So then when we relapse, we sometimes think, well, gosh, I've let people down. I've failed people. They're not going to love me anymore. They're going to judge me. When the fact is now, in my opinion, after you've kind of got past that first stages of, wow, this is kind of cool, to now it's going to be more real. After a relapse, our recovery becomes more real. I think it becomes more urgent. I think it becomes more honest. I think that we understand the process part of it now as opposed to this end result. We had an interesting conversation the other night, on Friday night, about someone who had relapsed after several months. And they were talking about, gosh, I got to this number of days and I just feel like a failure. And it was another person in there who's got some recovery time. It's like, don't look at it by days. Don't look at it that way. You were not using today. That's all you can do. That's recovery. The one day at a time isn't just said to sound good. It's not a cliche. It is meant because for many of us, when we're in the throes of our addiction, if we can get through the day without using, we've made it. And again, with morbid thinking, there's not one of us can predict what's going to happen tomorrow. But today we can get through without using, or maybe get through without relapsing, or maybe today is the last day of our relapse. Whatever it is, we can move forward. And we can do it because we know that Jesus Christ loves us. And the gift of relapse, I think, is that our recovery is now more real. Maybe we're not quite as full of ourselves now. Maybe we're a little more humbled. Because that's what I have seen. I have seen people in their 20-some years of recovery relapse because they started thinking they were doing it. They started getting full of themselves. They started believing they had the answers. They were probably out there sponsoring 7 people. They were probably talking about it, telling their story. That's when relapse gets dangerous, when we start thinking that we have control and we know what we're doing. The fact is, God is in control. Jesus Christ loves us. Our brains are healing. It's a process that we can only get better and better at. So, some things to do here if you relapse. A, it's a process. If you'll just believe that, we can probably stop talking right now. It's not a failure. It's not something to feel shame about. It is something to take seriously and stop it. But if we're judging ourselves and being perfectionistic, that's not going to happen. We're going to hide. We're going to withdraw. I can guarantee you, everybody that's listening to me who's relapsed, your first reaction is to hide and deny it, right? Are you using again? No, we haven't seen you in 3 weeks. Well, I've been busy. Yeah, we know what you've been busy doing. It's called relapsing, right? But we don't judge you for that. That's the point. So you have to see as a process. You have to see it that good and decent people are the ones that relapse because you're hurt, because you cared, because you're hurt again, or the pain got too high, or the dull, gray, drab world got too much, and I needed some living color somewhere just to give me some time in life again. The other thing is we have to realize that we're addicted, but we're not bad people. The anecdotal belief, like we'll talk about us guys, is the anecdotal belief with guys is that good and decent, caring, sensitive guys are the ones that get addicted more readily. Kind of sad, but it's how our society sees men, right? There was a survey. I just love this survey. I love surveys that are written well, right? And so they had this question. They said, would you rather be seen as smart or athletic, right? And so everybody, all the guys put smart, right? Wherever you seen, because they. So then the next question was, would you rather be Clint Eastwood or Stephen Hawking? And overwhelmingly, all of us guys put Clint Eastwood. So you get the point. Our society, we want macho. We think we got to be macho. We got to be tough. All these things. When the fact is, caring, sensitive is such great traits. But if we grow up, I have so many guys I've had in my office talk about how in their families they were told how they were flawed to be like that, or how they were wrong to be like that, or how it was you weren't tough enough, or whatever it is. When the fact is, what strengths it is to be caring and sensitive. So my point is, good people get addicted. You're not bad because you're addicted. You're probably a good person who got addicted because of the hurt and pain in your lives. So, of course, you already hear me say this, share, share, share. You cannot share enough once you relapse. So that's everything you got to do. And then, of course, you hear me talk this all the time, is you need to get back on your intentional gratitudes. Because I know that when I'm not doing well, my intentional gratitude journal goes away because I don't want to do it, or I'm too busy, or it's stupid, don't need to do it anymore, whatever. It's us lying to ourselves again. And you also got to see this as grief again. Recovery is about grief. We are grieving the losses in our life. We're grieving the pain in our lives. We're grieving the hurt in our lives. We're grieving all those things. And if we see recovery as grief, I think we can move forward better, make it more objective. And then the last thing, again, kind of state the obvious, is give God a chance. A lot of us have been hurt by so much. Some of us have been hurt by church. Some of us have been hurt by religion. But God is not church. God is not religion. God is love. Jesus Christ came to this world to forgive us of our sins. He loves us. And I hope that we can, if you're in the throes of relapse right now or using, I hope you can just hear that God loves you and He wants you back. And oftentimes when we're in our worst is when we're at our best for God, and never forget that. So again, I've used these scriptures quite a bit, but I think they're just so good. Again, David's writing this, and again, David's writing this when he's been caught in his addiction and his problems, and he goes, I learned God worship when my pride was shattered. Heart-shattered lives ready for love don't for a moment escape God's notice. Maybe we could change this, say, I learned God worship when I relapsed and my pride was shattered. That's when I was closest and most desperate to hear God's words. And then, of course, I love this in Luke 15. Again, the first part, I just love how he writes in the Message Bible. So he goes, by this time, a lot of men and women of doubtful reputation. By this time, a lot of men and women who were addicts, or relapsing, or not living the way they should be, were hanging around Jesus, listening intently. That's who Jesus loved to be with. Jesus loves us. He knows when we're at our worst, we're probably at our best spiritually in some ways, if we can just get rid of the shame, at least enough to hear. And so the Pharisees and religion scholars were not pleased, not at all pleased. They growled, he takes in sinners and eats meals with them. Ugh. Treating them like old friends. Their grumbling triggered the stories. And, of course, that's what triggered him to talk about the prodigal son, which is, in my opinion, the greatest parable of all. So he was talking about the prodigal son to tell the church people and those that don't have problems that maybe they do, and that he was connecting with the addicted people. So, have I said enough? Relapse is part of the process. Recovery is a process. The goal is to get better each day. We live one day at a time. We can really make a difference in our lives and those around us. We can let go of our shame. We can let go of the pain in our lives, and we can move forward. So let's close with the prayer of serenity. And again, Lisa, thank you so much for singing today. Let's pray. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that He will make all things right if I surrender to His will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with Him forever in the next. Amen. So again, if you would like to get a hold of me, you can call me at 804-746-5081. You can also email me at csimpson@wgva.church. I'd love to hear from you. If you're struggling with relapse, if you're struggling with recovery, please get a hold of me. We'd love to talk to you. Also, Friday nights at 6:30 if you're local, and 6:30 on Wednesday nights. If you can come, we'd love to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today.